The knock came early, just as the sky outside the kitchen window began to lighten with the cold gray. Maya Thompson stood in her robe, clutching a chipped mug of coffee, watching the milk swirl into Riley's cereal. The kettle hissed behind her, steam fogging the glass. Everything felt heavy that morning. The silence, the rain that had started in the early hours, even the air. "Mama?" Riley said, her voice small from the table. "Someone's knocking." Maya's heart gave a small jump. No one came out here this early. Their rented farmhouse, half a mile off the main road and swallowed by trees, was rarely visited by surprise. She wiped her hands on her robe and padded barefoot across the hardwood floor, careful not to startle Riley or wake Jonah upstairs. Maya stared at him. The words didn't make sense at first. They sounded too sterile, too rehearsed. But the way his eyes dropped said everything. "You're saying what exactly?" "You have 60 days, Miss Thompson, to make the outstanding payments or vacate the property." He handed her a thick envelope, legal papers, full of words she didn't want to understand, the kind of words people use to erase everything you'd built. "I'm sorry," he said again. And then he was gone, his shoes crunching through gravel as the rain picked up. Maya didn't close the door. She stood there, frozen, the envelope heavy in her hands, Riley's cereal forgotten behind her. Thunder groaned across the sky like an omen, and inside her chest, something cracked. The following days bled together. She got the kids off to school, took double shifts at the bakery, ignored the overdue notices piling by the door. Sleep was rare. Silence was worse. Grief had once been loud and immediate, a crashing wave that pulled her under. Now it was quieter, like a slow erosion, peeling away pieces of her each day. That night, Maya stayed late at the bakery. The place was a shadow of what it used to be. Her grandmother's pride and joy, with its teal awning and sweet smell of cinnamon. Now it was quiet. A single light buzzed above the counter as she scrubbed the surfaces with aching hands. The bell over the front door jingled. She didn't look up. "Sorry, we're closed." "I'm not here for bread," came a man's voice. She turned, cautious. A tall figure stepped inside, rain dripping from the edges of his hood. His clothes were worn, flannel, jeans, boots scuffed from travel. When he pulled the hood back, she saw a face weathered by time and something deeper. Regret, maybe? Pain? "I'm Caleb," he said. "Caleb Shaw. I knew your husband." Maya's breath caught. "We served together, overseas. Afghanistan," he added. She studied him, unsure. "Chris didn't talk about many people from that time." "Yeah, we lost touch." Caleb stepped further inside, eyes scanning the bakery like he recognized it. "He used to talk about this place, though. Said it smelled like lemon sugar, and that you made the best blueberry scones in the world." Something inside her softened against her will. "He said that, huh?" "All the time." She looked down at the counter. "I was just about to throw some out." He smiled gently. "I'd be honored to have one." They sat in the back room, the air warm with coffee and flour. Caleb told stories about the dusty outposts, the long nights, the jokes that kept them sane. Some of it made her laugh, some made her ache. It was the first time in months that Chris felt close again. "He always talked about you and the kids," Caleb said. "He really loved you." Maya felt tears sting the back of her eyes but blinked them away. She wasn't ready to cry in front of a stranger. When he stood to leave, he pulled a photo from his wallet. Chris, smiling, younger, his arms slung around Caleb's shoulders, both of them covered in dust and sun. "I wanted you to have this." She took it slowly, fingers brushing the edges. "Thank you," she whispered. "If you need anything," Caleb said, pausing at the door. "I'm staying out by the old mill house for a while, just around." And then he was gone. The next morning, after sending the kids off to school, Maya walked to the mailbox in her slippers, the air crisp and wet. Bills, junk mail, and, oddly, one plain white envelope. No return address. Inside was a cashier's check. $15,000. Her breath hitched. Her fingers shook. There was no letter, no explanation. Only one sentence scribbled on the back in rushed handwriting. "He didn't want you to suffer." Maya stood on the front steps for a long time, staring at the check. Her mind raced. Was it from Caleb? Was it real? Was it even legal? She looked out at the woods, at the road disappearing into the trees. The silence around her wasn't empty anymore. It was waiting. Somehow, Chris's past was still reaching for her, and she wasn't sure whether it meant danger or salvation. Maya stared at the check long after the clouds broke open again and rain fell steady against the porch roof. $15,000, enough to buy her 60 more days, enough to make her question everything. Back inside, she locked the door, closed the curtains, and sat at the kitchen table. Riley's crayon drawings were scattered there, rainbows and stick figures with hearts for hands. The contrast between their innocence and the storm in her chest nearly brought her to tears. Who had sent the money, and why now? She picked up her phone and typed Caleb's name into Facebook, but nothing came up. No profile, no tagged photos. It was like he didn't exist online. That wasn't unusual for someone ex-military, she figured, but it didn't make her feel better. She glanced at the check again. He didn't want you to suffer. Did Caleb mean Chris? Or was someone else watching her? The bakery buzzed with life that Saturday morning, unusually busy for a rainy day. Maya forced a smile for each customer, her hands moving on autopilot, kneading dough, pouring coffee, wrapping up cookies in brown paper bags. But her mind kept circling the check like a bird trapped in the rafters. "Rough week?" asked Angela, one of the regulars, leaning on the counter as Maya boxed up a lemon loaf. "Something like that," Maya said, sliding the box across with a weary smile. Angela tilted her head. "You okay, sweetie? You look like someone stole your puppy." Maya considered brushing it off, but something in her cracked. "Do you know a Caleb Shaw? Says he served with Chris?" Angela's face changed. The polite curiosity vanished, replaced with something colder. She blinked. "Caleb Shaw? You said Caleb?" Maya nodded slowly. Angela leaned in. "Maya, Caleb Shaw died, nearly 8 years ago. There was a whole article about it. Car accident after he came home. Drove off a bridge over in Rutland." Maya's heart skipped. "Are you sure?" "I remember because he was from here, a couple towns over. His mom still lives out near Winhall. Sweet woman, bakes pies for the church fair every fall." Maya's blood ran cold. "But I just saw him," she said. 2 nights ago. He came to the bakery. He gave me a photo of him and Chris." Angela frowned. "You must have met someone else, or it was a cruel prank. But it sure wasn't Caleb Shaw." That night, Maya sat at her kitchen table with the photo Caleb had given her, studying it like it held secrets she hadn't seen before. Chris looked young, 25 maybe, and happy, with his arm around the man who'd called himself Caleb. But now, doubt pressed in like fog. Could it have been doctored? Was she being targeted? She flipped the photo over. in faded blue ink on the back, Kandahar, 2013. The handwriting was Chris's. She knew that much. So what the hell was going on? She reached for the envelope that had held the check. A faint smudge near the flap caught her eye, like a fingerprint blurred by rain. She squinted closer, and just beneath the flap she noticed something strange. A tiny mark, drawn in pen. A symbol. A circle with a single vertical slash through the middle. It looked familiar, but she couldn't place it. Jonah shuffled into the kitchen in his pajamas, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "Why are you still up?" he mumbled. "I could ask you the same," Maya said, quickly slipping the envelope under a stack of mail. He poured himself some dry cereal and plopped into a chair. "I had a weird dream." "Yeah?" He looked up, eyes tired but serious. Dad was standing in the woods, not saying anything, just watching the house, like he was waiting for something. Maya's skin prickled. "Did he say anything?" Jonah shook his head. "No, but I felt like I wasn't supposed to open the window, like he didn't want me to let him in." The following afternoon, she made the drive out toward Winhall. The road curled along the forest's edge, the trees tall and wet with mist. She didn't tell the kids where she was going, just asked her neighbor to watch them for a few hours. The house was easy to spot. A faded blue ranch with sun-bleached wind chimes and a rusted mailbox that read Shaw. Maya pulled into the gravel drive and sat for a moment, gripping the steering wheel. Her heart thumped like a warning. She rang the doorbell. The woman who answered looked like time had pulled her down gently. White curls, eyes like water, and hands that trembled slightly as she opened the door. "Can I help you?" she asked. "I'm sorry to bother you," Maya said. "My name is Maya Thompson. My husband was Chris Thompson. He served with your son, with Caleb." The woman blinked. Her eyes softened. "Chris. Yes, I remember him. He came to the funeral." So Chris had known. He just never told her. "I know this is going to sound crazy," Maya said, voice tightening, "but a man came to my bakery, said his name was Caleb, gave me a photo of him and Chris, said he was staying out near the old mill house." The woman frowned deeply, her fingers curling over the doorframe. "That can't be." "I know," Maya said, "but he knew things, personal things, things Chris told him. He even looked like the photo." Mrs. Shaw stepped back, her eyes suddenly far away. "My son died on June 12th, 2017, drove off the bridge near Black Hollow Creek. But before he did, he left me a voicemail I never deleted." She walked inside without waiting, and returned a moment later with an old flip phone. She held it up and played the message. "Mom, I'm sorry. Something's wrong. I can't explain it here. If anything happens to me, tell Maya. Tell her Chris wasn't who she thought he was. Tell her to look at the symbol, the one we found in the cave. She'll understand." The message ended with static. Maya stood frozen. "Why didn't you ever reach out?" she asked quietly. "I didn't know who to trust," the woman whispered. "And I didn't know what it meant until now." Maya stepped back from the porch like the ground might open up beneath her. Her head spun. The symbol, the check, the dream, the fake Caleb. "What cave?" Maya asked, her voice barely audible. Mrs. Shaw looked at her with eyes full of quiet dread. "The one Chris and Caleb found during their last tour. They weren't supposed to be there, and whatever they brought back, someone didn't want it found again." That night, Maya couldn't sleep. Her thoughts raced like a storm. She couldn't get the voicemail out of her head, or the symbol burned into the back of her mind. At 3:17 a.m., The sound of shattering glass jolted her upright. She rushed downstairs. The front window was broken. On the floor, surrounded by shards, was a photo frame. The photo of Chris and Caleb. But now, someone had scratched out Caleb's face with deep, furious slashes and scrawled in thick red marker across the bottom, "Stop digging." The red marker was still wet. Maya's hands trembled as she stared at the ruined photo on the floor, shards of glass glittering around it like ice. The scratch marks over Caleb's face were deep, almost frantic. Whoever had done this hadn't just wanted to destroy the image, they'd wanted to erase him. She scanned the living room. No signs of forced entry beyond the shattered window. Riley and Jonah were still upstairs, sound asleep. She grabbed the fireplace poker with a shaking hand and moved through the house, room by room, heart hammering. Nothing. No one. Just silence thick with threat. After securing every door and window, Maya sat on the couch with the photo in her lap. Her mind spun through everything. The check, the voicemail, the symbol, the man who'd claimed to be Caleb, and now this. Someone was trying to scare her, and it was working. The next morning, the locksmith changed out every lock while the kids watched cartoons, blissfully unaware. Maya told them a rock had broken the window, just some bad luck. But her luck had been bad for over a year now. After breakfast, she went to the attic, digging through Chris's old military boxes. He'd never liked to talk about that part of his life, but he'd kept everything: dog tags, medals, faded journals, and a metal lockbox she'd never opened. It was heavier than she remembered. Inside were a few letters and a black notebook with no title. Its pages were filled with Chris's handwriting. Tight, slanted, the kind he used when he was stressed. Dates, locations, observations. Half of it made no sense to her, until she flipped to the final section. Drawings. Dozens of them. The same symbol, a circle with a vertical slash through the middle, repeated over and over again, like he'd been obsessed. Some were neat, others frantic, dark with heavy pen strokes. Next to one sketch, he'd written in all caps, "It's not just a mark, it's a key." And beneath it, "If I don't come back, tell Maya. Don't trust the man who wears my face." Maya's breath caught. The man who wears my face. She suddenly felt cold. She flipped back through the pages, searching for more. Then, pressed flat in the back of the notebook, she found a folded piece of old map paper. Coordinates were scribbled in the corner. She entered them into her phone. A forest. Roughly 2 hours outside of town. Near Black Hollow Creek. The same place where Caleb Shaw had supposedly died. The deeper she drove, the worse the reception got until her phone finally lost signal altogether. Still, she kept going, following the blue dot on her GPS until it froze, just half a mile from the creek. She parked on the side of the path and stepped out into the quiet. Leaves whispered in the wind. No bird song, no human sounds. Just the hum of something distant and ancient. She followed the path on foot, using the old map as her guide. After about 20 minutes of walking, she spotted it. A dark slit in the side of a mossy ridge, hidden by vines and shadow. The cave. The one Caleb, or whoever he was, had warned her about. Heart pounding, Maya crept closer. Inside it smelled of wet stone and something metallic. She clicked on her flashlight and stepped in. The light fell on the walls, smooth rock slick with age, and then on something else. Markings. The symbol again, carved into stone. Not just once, but dozens of times, like a forgotten language. Some were fresh, others worn by time. She turned a corner and froze. A small alcove. In the center sat a metal case. Modern, military issue. She opened it. Inside were files, maps, and an old USB drive wrapped in tape. One file had Chris's name on it. Another had a photo of Caleb Shaw, marked KIA. And none of that, a third file. This one stamped in red, Project Echo, evidence sealed by Order 717B. Maya backed away, breath short, pulse erratic. What the hell had they been part of? What had Chris gotten involved in? And why was someone hiding it? Behind her, a sound echoed through the cave. A footstep. She whirled, flashlight trembling in her hand. "Who's there?" she called, her voice bouncing off the stone. No answer. Then, a flicker of movement in the shadows. Maya backed toward the entrance, panic rising. Another step. Then another. A silhouette just beyond the reach of her light. Tall. Male. Watching. "Show yourself," she demanded. Slowly the figure stepped forward. Her breath caught. It was Chris, or someone wearing his face. Same eyes, same jawline, same scar under his left cheek. But his expression was wrong. Too calm, too blank. "Maya," he said softly, like a memory. "You weren't supposed to come here." She stumbled back, gripping the case tight. "What is this? Who are you?" "I tried to stop them," he said. "But it's too late now. You opened the door." "What door?" she whispered. He stepped closer. The flashlight flickered, and then the ground beneath her feet shifted. The cave wall cracked. A low rumble echoed deep below, and Maya fell, through darkness, into the unknown. She hit the ground hard. Stone and dirt slammed into her side as Maya tumbled down a steep shaft, her flashlight clattering away into darkness. For a moment, there was only the sound of her own ragged breathing, echoing in the silence of the underground. Pain bloomed in her ribs and knees, but nothing felt broken. Dazed, she pushed herself upright, wincing. Above her, the hole she'd fallen through was already closing, stone shifting like something alive, swallowing the entrance behind her, sealing her in. Maya sat there in stunned silence, her chest rising and falling fast. The metal case was still clutched in her hand, and just a few feet away, her flashlight flickered on its side, the beam sweeping over strange markings on the cavern walls. Not symbols this time, but faces. Carved deep into the rock were dozens of human faces, anguished, mouthless, wide-eyed, frozen in silent screams. She rose slowly and took a trembling step forward. "What the hell is this place?" she whispered. Then, behind her, "You weren't supposed to come here." She turned. Chris stood at the edge of the cavern, or what looked like him, his face ghostly in the dim light, his voice calm and detached. "You're not him," Maya said, her voice hoarse. "No," the thing replied, "but I remember him." Her blood chilled. "What are you?" The thing tilted its head. A messenger, a shadow left behind. Chris was one of the first to find this place. He and Caleb. They opened something they didn't understand. Something old. Something buried. Maya's mind raced. The symbol, the key. They thought it was a discovery, the voice continued. A cave system, a relic. But what they found was an echo, not of sound, not of history, of thought. She clutched the case tighter. "You're saying this place remembers people?" "It doesn't just remember," it whispered. "It keeps them." The stone around her pulsed with energy. Faint whispers swirled in the air, murmured phrases, voices that sounded like her husband, like Caleb, like men long dead. "You killed them," Maya said, backing away.
"We didn't have to," the voice said, with something like sadness. "They brought themselves here. Curiosity always does." Tears welled in her eyes.
"But Chris, he left messages. He tried to warn me."
"Yes," it said, "because he loved you more than he feared us."
Maya looked down at the case. Her fingers found the USB drive wrapped in tape. "What's on this?"
"Evidence," it said. "The kind that would burn down 100 secrets. Governments, experiments, the whole truth." She stared at the device.
"I'm taking it,"
she said. The voice didn't move, didn't argue, but the ground did. Suddenly the cavern began to shake. Stone cracked above her. Pebbles rained down. The faces in the walls began to glow faintly, their eyes bleeding white light. "You've made your choice," it said. And then the figure of Chris, not Chris, vanished like dust. Maya ran. Clutching the case, she stumbled through collapsing tunnels, her flashlight flickering wildly in her hand. The cave behind her roared as the earth split open. Echoes of screams, impossible whispers, and wind that wasn't wind howled through the darkness. She didn't look back. She followed instinct, the same primal force that had guided her through childbirth, grief, and survival. Somehow, she found a narrow tunnel sloping up. Light glowed faintly at the far end. She sprinted, lungs burning, limbs shaking, and finally burst through into the forest. She collapsed on her hands and knees, coughing, gasping for air, soaked in mud. Behind her, the cave mouth sealed with a final grinding rumble. Gone, buried, like it had never been there. 3 days later, Maya sat in her living room, with the kids asleep upstairs, the metal case open in front of her. She'd plugged the USB into an old laptop, disconnected from the internet. What she found chilled her. Videos, maps, secret recordings, logs of experiments conducted on soldiers, memory extraction, identity transfer, neurological imprinting. Project Echo had been an attempt to turn consciousness into a weapon, to preserve it beyond death, to extract not just knowledge, but people. Chris and Caleb had found one of the original test sites. They'd uncovered something buried, something living in the walls. And someone had spent years trying to make sure it stayed hidden. The check, the impersonator, the threats. Someone or something didn't want the truth out. But Maya had made a decision. A week later, she mailed the USB and documents to 4 major news outlets, each from a different town. No names, no return address, just the words, "This must be seen." Then she sold the bakery, packed up the farmhouse, and took the kids away. She didn't leave a forwarding address, didn't say goodbye to anyone but her neighbor. Jonah asked why they were leaving. "Because some places don't want to be found," she said. "And because your dad gave us a second chance. We have to take it." They drove west, away from Vermont, away from the woods and the echoing cave, and the face that wore her husband's smile. Months passed. The story hit the news in waves. Leaked government files reveal secret human memory experiments, but most of it was dismissed as a hoax. Too unbelievable, too horrifying. The footage was real, but the context was unclear. And that was fine by Maya. She wasn't after justice anymore, just peace. One crisp fall evening, she stood in the backyard of their new house in Oregon, watching Jonah and Riley kick a soccer ball. The wind smelled like pine and apples. For the first time in a long time, she felt like herself again. But as the sun began to dip behind the trees, she noticed something. A flicker of movement. A figure at the edge of the woods, too far to make out clearly, just standing there, watching. She stepped off the porch slowly. "Kids," she called calmly. "Come inside, now." Jonah and Riley obeyed, racing past her and into the house. She looked back. The figure was gone, but carved into the nearest tree, fresh and raw, was a symbol, a circle, and a line straight through it. The end.